What's up, guys? It's Tom. Welcome back to the lab. Welcome back to another video. Welcome back to my life. Now, today I'm going to get into something that I've been wanting to make a video about for a while, but I haven't had the data to do it, but now I do. This video is about how I managed to double the number of followers I have on Spotify in the span of 2 weeks. Now, to accomplish this, I used Facebook ads. So what we're going to do in this video is I'm going to first walk you through the data and the results to show you where I started and where I ended up and what that looked like. Then I'm going to jump over to Spotify for Artists, show you some data in there. And then finally, I'm going to take you over to Facebook ads and share with you what I did in the ad platform to set up my campaigns, to set up my ad sets, etc., and walk you through the whole thing to show you exactly what I did and how I accomplished this. Now, before we get into it, I want to remind you guys, as always, to please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the little bell notification if you're digging it. I would love for you to be here for the whole journey. I'm constantly churning out these sort of experiments and trying and testing things that I can share with you to help you grow your music business. So do that, and it'll make me happy, and I think it'll make you happy. Anyway, moving on. Let's hop into the spreadsheet here. As you can see, since Monday, April 27th, I have been recording every single Monday my streaming numbers. I've been keeping track of listeners, streams, followers. And then I have calculated my stream ratio, which is the number of streams per listener. And then I've been calculating my follower ratio, which is the number of followers as it relates to the number of listeners I have. So how many of my listeners are followers or are turning into followers? This is the information that I want. So the date range that we are most concerned with is Monday, June 15th through Monday, June 29th, because I started running my Facebook ad campaign on Monday, June 15th. And within that 2-week span, I went from, as you can see, 76 followers to 162 followers, just over 2 times what I started with. I recorded my data on Monday, June 15th, Monday, June 22nd, and then Monday, June 29th. So in a span of 2 weeks, I effectively doubled my followers. But that's not the only thing that happened. Let's go from the left to the right. So my listeners stayed relatively the same. I got about 60 more listeners than I had beforehand, but the engagement increased way more than it had been before. Prior to Monday, June 15th, my only source of listeners was people who found me on social media, like YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all that. And then just playlists I had gotten added to with my latest release when we were young, and also playlists that still continue to play older releases that I released last year. So basically, we can pretty much say that everything from Monday, April 27th, all the way to starting on Monday, June 15th, is all playlist driven and organic. Actually, let's just nix the organic. We can say that it's all playlist driven, pretty much. So all of the engagement is playlist driven. So as you can see, like starting on Monday, April 27th, the follower ratio is only 8% of the listeners that I have. But by the time I was done with this on Monday, June 29th, it's at 24%. So almost a quarter of the people who are listening to me are now choosing to follow my account on Spotify as well, which is really cool. So let's just look at the date range, the 15th to the 29th. That's the 2-week period where I did my experiment with Facebook ads. Listeners went from 598 to 663. Number of streams went from 712 to 1,400. Once you get above the 1,000 mark, they don't show you the 10 and single digit. They just say 1.4 thousand. So I just round it to 1,400. But I effectively doubled my number of streams as well. Followers doubled, 76 to 162. My stream ratio effectively doubled. I went from 1.2 streams per listener to 2.1 streams per listener. And then my follower ratio went from 13% to 24%, again, effectively doubling. What this tells me is that I'm not necessarily getting a ton more listeners, but the listeners I am getting are way more engaged. Pretty much you can say that they are twice as engaged as they were beforehand. And this is really important. This is exactly what I want. This is what you want, or you should want. You want listeners who are there to invest in your music and into you as an artist. And that's what I have figured out finally how to tap into. Going through all the playlisting platforms before this did not achieve that, clearly. I had an 8% follower ratio, a 10% follower ratio. But now a quarter of the people who are coming to my profile to listen to my music are choosing to follow me because they want to see what I'm going to put out next. That to me is amazing. So this is a huge, huge victory that I've uncovered here by running Facebook ads to do this. Now let's hop over to the other tab here on just specifically when we were young. I'm going to show you the ad in a minute that I ran to promote this whole thing. It's a clip from the music video for When We Were Young. I will link to that in the description below if you want to check it out. You can also go check out the song on Spotify, which I will link to below as well. My artist name is TD3, TDIII. Go look at that if you want to. So When We Were Young, let's look at this data real quick. The same time span, Monday, June 15th through Monday, June 29th. So the number of streams went from 437 to 894, effectively doubling the number of streams for that particular song. The number of listeners went from 387 to 450, which is not nearly doubling at all. It's about the same increase as the number of listeners I had on my entire profile, which means, again, the listeners are more engaged. They are listening to the song more frequently than they were before. So these are listeners who are very, very interested in the music and in me as an artist. The number of saves went through the roof. It went from one save the week of Monday, June 15th, to 68 saves the week of Monday, June 29th. But in the middle there, on the 22nd, 68 saves that week as well. So I went from a stream ratio of 1.13 streams per person to effectively 2 streams per person, effectively doubling. Then I went from a save ratio of pretty much 0 to a save rate of 8%. And in the middle there, it was up to 11%. So again, the listeners are more engaged. These are people who are actually interested in my song and in me as an artist, not just listening to me mindlessly on a playlist that has some music that they think is cool. So this is a very, very important distinction. It's not just that they're listening, it's that they are listening to me. They are coming to listen to me, and then they are interested in being engaged with me. Now, something else I want to add on top of this that I don't have the data written down for is that my Instagram following has grown by about 200 to 250 followers within the 2-week span that I ran this. I've gotten a ton of DMs from people on Instagram saying how much they love my song, how much they really enjoy my music, and they want to follow it. They can't wait to hear what I release next. I've had people wanting to collab with me because they heard me saying that my voice is dope or that my song is dope, and then can I be on their track? If I have a track in the future that they would be a good fit for, they would love to work with me. So lots of opportunities for relationships have opened up tremendously as a result of doing this, because I am targeting and interacting with people who actually are genuinely interested in my music and in me as an artist specifically. And that's what we want. So now that we have picked through this spreadsheet, let's hop on over to Spotify for Artists, and I will showcase a little bit of the data there before we move over to Facebook ads, and I'll show you exactly the nuts and bolts of how I made this happen. All right, so here we are in Spotify for Artists. Let's take a look at the data in here, and I'll show you how it supports the spreadsheet that I just showed you. I'm here in the Audience tab for Spotify for Artists, and as you can see, over the past 28 days, I've had 2.2 thousand listeners, and I'm up 14% from last month. Cool, go team. But here's what we want to look at. Monday, June 15th, I had 104 daily listeners. Then you come over here to Monday, June 29th, I had 108. So it has stayed relatively the same on the listener front. The number of streams has gone up very clearly. In fact, I had one day last Thursday where I had almost double the average of what I get on streams. So somebody went ham and really was digging my song. Monday, June 15th, 124 streams. And then Monday, June 24th, 204 streams. So the streams are trending upward, which is really good. And then the followers. This is the cool part. As you can see, prior to Monday, June 15th, my follower count stayed pretty stagnant. But then starting on Monday, June 15th, when I started running my ads, it has turned into basically a 45-degree angle going upward. And I have no reason to believe that it will stop as long as I keep running my ads. Every single day, it continues to climb. So let's take this out into a broader context. And you can see, look at this. Look at that turn up at the end here. Right here, Monday, June 15th. Well, Sunday, June 14th is as close as I can get. But look at that. It just starts to go straight up. As you can see, I first released music at the beginning of 2019, and it has just sort of trickled along the whole time. This bump right here is when I put out When We Were Young, and it bumped up a little bit. All right, cool. And then it started to bump up a little bit more because of When We Were Young. And then I started running my ads and it just took off. This is what we are after. Followers and engaged listeners is so much more important than just blanket streams alone. If you're just getting streams and people don't even know it's you and they're just listening to a playlist, then it's not really helping you grow. This is actual growth, because every single one of these people who follows me now is going to hear about my next release, which is a really, really cool thing. And it will grow over time. So it's a snowball effect. With every release, every follower I get, I'm going to have more followers, a bigger fan base, and more activity on each subsequent release. This is what we're going for. Also, I didn't record this data, and this is my bad for not doing that, but this is an important distinction to make too. The source of my streams in my catalog here, before I ran this, it was almost like 75% on other people's playlists. And it was effectively 0 on Spotify algorithmic playlists, which is a hugely important deal. But now I've got 26% on my profile and catalog, 22% in people's own libraries, and 6% on Spotify algorithmic playlists. Those three numbers will continue to grow, and the playlist percentage will continue to decline, because people are coming directly to my profile and they are listening to my music, and then they are saving it to theirs. And then as Spotify gathers this data about people being genuinely interested in the music, it starts to add it to personalized algorithmic playlists for these users and users like them, so I can grow my fan base and my listener base. All very, very exciting, interesting things in my opinion. All right, now that we've looked through the spreadsheet and all the data in Spotify for Artists, let's get to the juicy part. I'm going to show you in Facebook Ads Manager how I did this and how I ran my campaigns and set everything up so that you can repeat it. All right, so we're here in Facebook's Ad Manager. And right off the bat, you can see that up here at the top right, I've got my date set from June 15th to June 29th. So you can see exactly what I had going on in that window of time, just that 2-week span. I got 1,815 link clicks. I had an 8-cent cost per click. I think that number continues to go down. In fact, I think this week it is at 6. So it has averaged out even lower than that now. My click-through rate is 0.16% for this window of time. It is now up to 0.22% as of today. So that continues to improve as well. And the reason that is because I'm finally taking advantage of Facebook's algorithm and their machine learning, letting the ad platform do the work for me through the campaign budget optimization feature. I'll explain a little bit more about that in just a second. So let's go to the campaign TD3 Spotify profile and look at my ad sets. Now we're only going to look at the bottom 3. The top one we're going to ignore because that one is not something that was active until this week. I have just been playing around with that this week. As you can see, there is no traffic on it because I added it on, I think, Monday. Looking at the ad sets here, what I did is I created 3 different ad sets: a low priority market, a mid priority market, and a top priority market. And the way that I split these out was the low priority market is full of countries where the cost per click is very, very low. If allowed to run on its own, this low priority market ad set will just eat up all of my budget and traffic because the cost is so cheap. So I had to split it out and do them individually like this so that it wouldn't all go to one place. And then the mid priority market is countries where the cost per click is still relatively cheap, but not as cheap as the low and not as expensive as the high. And then the top priority market, is clearly the one where the cost per click is the most expensive. What I did is, we'll just use the low priority market as an example. All of these are very similar. In the low priority market, I added all of these countries. Now, if you want to screenshot this, these are all the countries in the low priority market ad set. In the mid priority market, I added these countries. You can screenshot this as well. And then in the top priority market, I added these countries. You can screenshot this too. In every single one, I targeted people who matched these artists. All of these artists, I think, have some sort of similarity to me as an artist and to specifically my song When We Were Young. And when I first started this, the age range I kept completely wide open, 13 to 65 plus, because the first week I wanted to gather data on who was clicking through. And then I would go to Spotify for Artists and see if it reflected what I was seeing on the Facebook side. So if I was getting clicks from 13-year-olds on Facebook. I wanted to see, is that going up on Spotify for Artists? And it was. And then I left the language open. I didn't do anything else except I targeted these artists. And then you also have to have an affinity for Spotify. You have to match with having interest in Spotify. So this is how I did my detailed targeting right here. People who match the bands that are similar to me or the artists that are similar to me, and they must also match Spotify. A very important thing. On the top and mid priority markets, I left everything else open, the same, no spend limits, but on the low priority market, I added a $1 per day maximum. That's 10% of my daily budget. I spent $10 a day for this every single day. And the reason is, if I left this open, it would suck up all of my budget and the other two markets wouldn't get any traffic at all. And we don't want that. That's the only distinction between the three in this part. Now going down all the way, all the others are the same as well, top, mid, and low. I only used stories placements. That's it. I did not use placements for anything else. I didn't do audience network. I didn't do Facebook feeds or Instagram feeds. None of that. Don't worry about any of that. I only used stories. And the reason I use stories is because most often when you are perusing through Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger stories, you have your sound on. And sound is very crucial if you're trying to market music. That is the best place for someone to actually hear your song while seeing the visual. What I also did was select all three stories. Instagram stories is by far the most popular. Facebook stories is not really catching on yet, so it's super cheap. And then Messenger stories is exactly the same. It's super cheap. And Spotify likes it when you send traffic to your profile from multiple destinations. So if it can come from 3 different places in all these different countries, Spotify's algorithm likes that. It responds well to that. Clearly, based on the data that I have doubled my follower count. So that's why I did it this way. Oh, and one more thing. I talked about how I left it wide open on the first week, 13 to 65. On the second week, I narrowed it in based on the data that I had from the first week. So I brought it back down to 35 and left it at 13. And I cut out everybody above that because I wasn't getting any traffic anyway. And so it didn't help me at all. So I cut that out and have narrowed down my audience even more. So I'm constantly refining this. That's the important thing to remember. I'm constantly refining this whole thing. On that note, when I started running this, I used 3 different ads to split test. I have my campaign, then from there I have my ad sets, and every single ad set, all 3 ad set had 3 ads. So I have 9 total ads to start with. Again, ignore the build ads because those are new. It's a new thing I'm testing this week. Every ad set had 3 ads to start with, and I will show you what those were. It's the exact same 3 ads per ad set. I split tested them so I could figure out which one performed the best. So here are the 3 ads that I ran.
Just like when we were young and the world couldn't keep us down. No. Just like when we were young. Just like when we were young and the world couldn't keep us down. No. Just like when we were young. Just like when we were young and the world.
I'm not going to make you listen to the third one a third time. As you can see, they're all very, very similar. It's the exact same clip. I just formatted a little bit differently and added a little bit different text. So I have a square one, 2 vertical ones. The square one has text, a vertical one has text, and then the third vertical one has no text at all. And actually, surprisingly, the one with no text at all is the one that performed the best. So I paused all of the other ones and I'm only running number 3, which is the one with no text. That is the one that Facebook's algorithm started to push more than others anyway. As you can see in the time frame, I had way more impressions from those 3 than I did the other ones. It's just the one that people were engaging with the most. So I paused the other ones after the end of week 1 and have only been running the one with no text ever since. So that is how I did it. I ran this for $10 a day, every day for 2 weeks. And here's the coolest part. The entire amount that I spent was $144.75. For $150, let's say, I doubled my following, I doubled my engagement, added 200 to 250 followers on Instagram, and I increased the amount of engagement and relationships I was able to cultivate on that platform as well. And why that's so cool is that I spent about $150 on this. The last campaign I ran with Playlist Push, which I ran for When We Were Young, I spent more than double that. And I didn't get nearly that amount of engagement. In fact, I only got about 30 followers out of the whole thing, and I spent $300. And if you want to watch this video here, you can see that last year in 2019, I spent $1,000 on playlist promotion, and I only got 43 followers the whole year. I got 70 something, 80 something followers in 2 weeks off of 15% of that budget that I spent last year. This is a much better strategy to drive actual engagement and actual fans and listeners to your Spotify profile. People who will follow you, people who really want to enjoy your music and will come back for more with each subsequent release. And the reason it works so well is that Facebook uses this very complex algorithm that they have spent a lot of time perfecting to figure out who's clicking, how they're engaging with it, and then finds ways to optimize that to find more people who maybe you hadn't even thought of to drive more traffic to you. But the most critical thing is this. This has to keep running. The only way Facebook's campaign optimization strategy will work is if I keep this ad running. It has to keep going on and on and on. That's the way it continues to optimize. So once you start the snowball, it's really important that you keep the snowball rolling, because if you don't, it will melt and you have to start over. By keeping it rolling, we are able to build traffic on social media and traffic on Spotify, and it will grow exponentially over time, but you have to keep it going. So my argument is this: I would not spend less than $10 a day, definitely not less than $5. If you don't have that yet, save up before you start this, because once you start, you need to be committed to keep it going. That's the biggest piece of advice I would give you. This is the best way I have found so far. Outside of all the stuff I've tested, Facebook ads is the best way to get engagement, get followers, get listeners. But you need to wait until you can afford the budget to do it. So if it's $10 a day, you need to save up $3,600 to do it for an entire year. Now that may sound like a lot, but if you're going to release 10 songs throughout the year and promote them all with Playlist Push for $300 a pop, you're going to spend that anyway. So do this, save up, get your budget together, and then keep it going, and it will continue to grow based on what I've learned so far. I'm going to keep this going. I'm going to report back on it later at a later date. I'm going to keep experimenting with it. I'm going to keep adjusting things and learning more, and I'm going to keep sharing it with you. So that's it for this video. I hope this has been super helpful. I have loved digging into this. If there's anything else you want to know about this, please let me know in the comments section. I would love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. I'd appreciate it. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.